Like Ronda, you guys are both Olympic athletes. This is different than just regular fighters. Can you talk about what makes it different?
The fact that both of us have been doing it for such a long time at such a high level, it changes things. Like some of the girls, they've been getting into it more in the recent years, like 5 to maybe 10 years ago. But I've been training in wrestling and MMA for 19 years. I'm sure, I don't know exactly how long Ronda has, but I mean, it's pretty extensive, and so it just changes the level of our capabilities.
Ronda, how do you feel about that too? Because this is a woman that's been just like you, competing at a high level since she was a little girl.
I think it's an amazing matchup, and it's great for not just women's MMA, but MMA in general. I think this is probably the first time in history. Have you ever had two undefeated?
No. Olympians, never.
But have you ever had even two undefeated people fighting for the title?
I don't know about that.
I don't think so.
We have two undefeated fighters, both not just Olympians, but Olympic medalists fighting each other. I mean, women's MMA has almost skipped ahead of the guys in this one a little bit.
I'm sitting here already. Enough I'm sitting here and the only guy without a freaking Olympic medal. I'm like the odd person out. I'm the only one without a damn medal. You can bring that shit up.
That's why you got moved to the co-main.
I'm right in the middle. Right in the middle.
Hey, I'm just saying, Beijing Team 08 still undefeated in all of MMA.
It's funny.
Come on, let me talk up the ladies a little bit.
Go ahead.
Come on.
I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
So, yeah.
For both Sara and Ronda, you are in that position where you're trying to establish female MMA, and it's this new thing in terms of the UFC. But you get to get that one up on the guys, being the first two Olympians to ever fight in the octagon.
Is it the first two Olympians? Or?
Yeah, it's the first time that two Olympians are meeting the octagon.
Yeah, so with just all those factors combined, I'm like, Olympians, Olympic medalists, undefeated for the championship. We've never had that many factors come together for the UFC championship, and it just really speaks out how far MMA has come in general. They used to just be kind of sold as these are two guys that they picked up from outside in the bar, and then they gave them some extra money to fight in front of some people, and now it's just like the athletes that get to the absolute epitome of their sport are now, moving over into MMA and being successful. And why are they being successful? Because we're using our Olympic sports. This is not, brawling or, human cockfighting like people call it. Like, I walk in there and I pretty much do exactly what I did representing my country in the Olympics for doing. And she goes in there and she does exactly what she learned to do for her sport, and there's nothing barbaric or anything about that. We're celebrated for what we do in one arena and we're criticized for it in another, and I really feel like this bringing the whole relation to the Olympics into it kind of softens up the look of MMA a little bit more, and people are going to look at us more as athletes, not just fighters.
Sara, can you comment on this same thing?
I agree, and I think that the same thing is with like boxing and Muay Thai. Like some people have it as like, oh, it's just this barbaric show, but the level of skill that you need to be, an excellent boxer or Muay Thai fighter is unbelievable. And it's called in boxing, it's called the sweet science. Like the amount of technique that you need is, it takes at least a decade of work to put in, and it's not like two guys just getting out there trying to smash each other, or two girls. And then, so, I mean, people I think are starting to get an idea of how much we dedicate our lives to this.
What's your guys' relationship, you and Ronda? Like, have you guys met each other before? Is this the first time?
We never even got to meet before. This is the first time. You lucky dog. You get to
No, you guys seem like there's no animosity. This is like a test of skills, I guess.
Well, it's different, I think, whenever you have respect for the person you're competing against. I don't think it changes how you will compete, but I've competed against Olympic medalists. I've competed against world medalists and champions, as has Ronda. And, you have a certain degree of respect for the people who've put in the work that you've put in. So, it's a little bit different than somebody who maybe has only done it for a little bit of time. Like, you don't feel like, oh, like they deserve my total respect for that.
What do you think, Ronda?
Well, I've been following Sara's career from the very beginning. We pretty much started at exactly at the same time, and I always thought that this would be the perfect fight to really bring up, in a big venue. And I think this is the perfect time for everything to be coming together. And I couldn't be more excited to have like an athlete of Sarah's level to really test myself against. And it helps all of us, you know. It can't be like, oh, it's just one Olympian in the division that got to jump on everybody else. And it's just, it raises the whole level for everybody. And I mean, I couldn't have a single bad thing to say about her. You know, she's practically Saint McMann. You know? Saint McMahon was, you know,
Not unless you see me before I drink coffee.
Technically, we're teammates already. You know, we were both at the 04 games, and so it's just like you. What was like the one thing they always put Olympian? You're always an Olympian, never former, never past, and so it's something that I think. Yeah, I don't want to speak for them, but it's something that you carry with you your whole life. It's something that you're always going to have pride in, and you're always going to have respect for the others that have reached that goal as well.
Yeah, we both, like all of us were contributing towards our country's medal count, and that's something to be extremely proud of, you know, so we were competing. Oh, sorry.
You guys are killing me.
I'm sorry. You know, like at one point, you know, before we ever even knew each other, we were striving for the same goal in our individual sports.
I mean, in terms of the actual style matchup of a fight, you know, it's wrestling. Wrestling versus judo.
I personally feel, even before this, that really you can't. It's not at a point where you can really pit like one sport against another sport, because there's so many individual factors that come into play. So, like, I don't feel like any person carries wrestling or judo or boxing on their back. It's, you know, this boxer might beat this judo person, but this judo person might beat that Muay Thai guy, and like, you know, there's so many different factors. It really is individual matchups.
And for all three of you being Olympians, at what point do you get in your career and start to feel like a fighter? You know, because it's different than just competing as an athlete.
I mean, I always felt like a fighter as a judo player. Like, there would be a lot of times where I was in matches and the person I was fighting was kind of playing to points a little bit, and they would just get ahead by a little score and then run away the whole rest of the time. And I wouldn't even be in the fight at that moment. I would just think, I was like, if this was a real fight, I would kill you. You know, and I would always tell myself that I was the best fighter in the world, even if, you know, not every judo match would go my way. So I always thought of myself as a fighter even back then. And when I started hearing about MMA, and there's like, okay, so the referee doesn't really get involved until the end, and you get unlimited time on the ground. Like, this is really the rules of what this is, you know. And so I never thought of, I'm a fighter now that I do MMA. It was like, oh, now that I'm in a different sport that has more rules, I can express more of the, you know, what I have to offer as a fighter, as opposed to like within a sport that has so many like regulations in it.
It's just you're so tied to the sport that you did your entire life that I'm always gonna be a wrestler. Like, I'm a wrestler first more than anything. But you know, as Ronda said, you know, you fight. I mean, I used to get in fights all the time in wrestling. Like, I'd fight on the mat and I'd fight in practice. So it's just something in you. You know, you see those guys that come in and wrestle and try to fight, and they cower away from punches. You know that it's that fight or flight that's inside of you. And some people aren't fighters. You know, so you know it. The moment you go into a cage, it doesn't matter if you lose every time. You're a fighter. You went into that cage. Not everybody can do that, but wrestler first always.
I agree with that, just because that's what I have the strongest ties towards. But also, like Daniel was saying, that there are certain people that you know from your sport that you're like, they're going into MMA. Oh my God, like they just have a little bit crazier factor about them that you're just like, they are gonna love the expansion of the rules. You know, like there's somebody who is like chomping at the bit to push the absolute limits of our rules in wrestling towards, you know, physical pain. So you're like, that's a mean guy or a mean girl. And I've encouraged some of the girls that I wrestled with that were like 115 or whatever. I'm like, you need to do fighting. You're really gonna like this. So I think it really is like kind of in you.
You bring up an interesting point, and I'd like DCU to comment on this as well. I've heard from certain coaches, they say that women are more coachable, maybe because you guys go in there saying, I have a lot to learn, I'm not a guy, you know, who's just so much a guy who thinks I already know how to fight, that women can be more coachable and can learn faster, better than men. Do you guys agree with that?
I've never been a man before.
No, I know. Touche. But you see how men are. You train with men. You certainly know who listens, who doesn't.
If the ones that are successful are the ones that listen.
Yeah.
Whether you're a female or you're a guy. You know, it doesn't matter. The ones that are successful are the ones that are gonna listen. You know, you watch guys in fights. You know, you can tell that Cain Velasquez listens to his coaches. You can tell that Ronda and Sara listen to their coaches because they're successful. The guy that goes off the beaten path, the guy that wants to do his own thing, that's the guy that's not going to find a success at the highest levels of the sport. You can get along pretty good. You can get to a certain level, but you will never cross into the through the stratosphere. You'll never get to where you really want to go if you're that macho. You have to be willing to listen. So I may tell my coach, you know, as I do all the time, I cuss him. Hell with you, and I leave. Well, you know, after about 5 minutes, I walk back like a puppy with my tail between my legs. Because nobody's chasing you. It's your job. And you're going to get your ass kicked in the cage if you don't come back in here and learn. That's pretty much that's what it boils down to. Man or woman.
I've heard that the women are more appreciative, you know, like, and I think that being around a lot of females in more of a male-dominant sport, which with wrestling and with fighting, that the girls come back and they're like, thank you so much for working with me. I really appreciate it because, you know, a lot of attention is diverted towards the guys before women became a little bit more popular in wrestling and in MMA. So it was them taking time out of their schedule to individually teach you. So, which the guys, it's sometimes a little bit more expected.
Yeah.
Sarah, how are you prepared to make this jump up to the main event? You headlined it in Invicta, but in terms of the UFC and the media monster and everything you have to deal with leading up to your title challenge, how are you preparing for that?
I guess in my mind I just expected it to be really similar to what I experienced for the Olympics, which is we were the first team for the Olympics in 2004, so we received a lot of attention to help our sport, so it was like a constant barrage. Like I couldn't even sit down and eat a meal without, you know, having reporters there. Like they just, outside of our training time, it was kind of packed with interviews, and we were all like, okay, we have to do this because this is helping our sport, but it was wearing, but now I think the second time around, it's just going to be a little bit easier because I know what to expect.
Sarah, can you talk about what did you see in Ronda's last fight and the way that fight was decided? What were your thoughts about it?
What are my thoughts about it?
About
Well, it wasn't decided. It was finished. So no, I thought that was a really good fight. I think both women prepared for the fight very well and for their matchup. And I think that you could see with the intensity and the passion that both of them fought that they really were leaving everything out there. And I think that that's what does the most justice for the MMA fans is two people that are willing to go out there and put everything on the line and, you know, walk out of that cage with no regrets.
Can somebody avoid to be armbarred by Ronda Rousey?
Is it what?
Can somebody survive the armbar?
Well, I'm pretty sure a lot of girls in judo did it. I mean, unless she finished every single match by that and won the gold every time she competed. So the same with me, though. Like, people have defended things that I do well. Every athlete is beatable. Every athlete, you know, has weaknesses, and myself is included in that.
Did you think Misha had a good strategy, though?
It isn't the strategy I would have used.
That's Daniel.
Don't do that.
GC, are you relieved that you don't have to fight 5 rounds because the women stepped up in the main event?
You know, I got asked if I was upset, and I said no. I think you just gave me the best news that I've gotten in a long time. Really, because just with the whole first time down to 205 and everything, I would much rather fight in a 3-round fight than a 5-round fight. And you know, to be on a card with two ladies that are Olympians, Olympic medalists, you know, during the Olympic Games, the Winter Olympic Games are going to be going on, and yeah, it was. I'm excited. I'm excited about the fight that I have because I think the guy's tough, but you know, just to be fighting on the same card as two girls that I went to the Olympic Games with, Ronda and I twice. Yeah, it's a big deal. You know, earlier you asked Ronda about, you know, it seems like there's no animosity towards Sara. You got to kind of go back in history and look at her career before just her last fight or the 2 fights with Misha to understand that there's never any animosity between Ronda and the other person. You know, you have to understand that first and foremost, you know, she's an Olympian. She's going to carry herself with dignity, And that's what happens unless somebody just really brings it out of you. You know, and that's what happened in the last fight. So you don't expect her and Sara to be barking at each other. These are two women that have done things that most people can only dream about. And that's why this is the fight. This is the fight that we've all, I mean, she came up to the set the other day and I said, I'd love to see you fight Sara at some point. And she goes, you know what? That's the fight I want because she's a competitor. Just as Sara is, so it's going to be a good fight. Yeah. You guys have fun. 5 rounds. Enjoy yourself. enjoy practice. Enjoy practice. Enjoy practice because it's not even the fight. It's practice. It's every day going into the sparring room and knowing that you've got to fight hard. And when you go, a half an hour is going to pass before you go back to the other room. You're going to be in there by yourself for 30 minutes with however many guys you have to spar with. So, yeah, I'm very happy.
You said something interesting, DC, while we're eating, about the fact that when these two match each other up, she's going to feel different. Sara's going to feel different than Ronda's other competitors. And can you explain that a little bit on camera? Because I think that's a really good point.
Well, for Ronda, it's like when Ronda fights, it's almost like it's almost determined because I know that these girls don't have what it takes to beat a lifetime athlete. Ronda says it herself. She said it last time. She goes, I'm a lifetime athlete. You wrestled on the boys' high school team. I mean, that's true. No truer statement was spoken through all the bickering and everything else. Nothing was truer than that statement. So when she feels Sara, she's gonna feel the type of power and the type of athlete that she felt in her judo competitions. It's not gonna be like grabbing someone that you can just throw down. It'll be like, okay, now I'm grabbing someone that's on an athletic level that I am. I don't know how the fight's going to play out, but physically, it'll feel different because now Sara's base is going to be different because she's been wrestling her entire life. As Sara's going to feel with Ronda. Yeah. She's never competed against a girl like this outside of wrestling. You know, in MMA, Sara's been fighting girls that she double legs them, she just throws them down. Yeah. Well, it's going to be a lot harder to do against Ronda because Ronda's an Olympian. These girls are lifetime athletes. I mean, I can't even remember. I mean, when did you start wrestling?
When I was 14.
14. And when did you start competing judo?
11.
11 years old. These girls have been competing at the highest levels for over a decade, you know? So, yeah, it's going to be different. It's going to be good. I know when I'm done fighting, I'm going to go back and watch these girls fight.
And you guys agree, yeah? It's gonna be different.
Definitely. Like, I'm absolutely positive that the way that I was able to throw Misha when she came in for those shots, it would not be possible to do that against Sara. Just because of the time that she's put in and the level of athlete that she is and the technique that she has, I know that I'm definitely have to approach her as a completely different than Misha, even though they both came from a wrestling background. The level of Sara's, the level that she's at she has to be approached in an entirely different way.
Ronda, there was an era when everybody was looking at Mia Hamm like a new sports role model, being a great soccer player. Then Danica Patrick, and now it looks like you are embracing this role of actually you are a new female sports star. How do you embrace, how do you assimilate this mediatic impact that you are having in this sport?
I just adjust according to what the situation is. You know, you adapt and survive regardless of what's going on, and so it's definitely difficult to be under such scrutiny all the time, but just the one thing I really discovered is that people are going to be unhappy with you regardless, and you're going to say something at some point that people aren't going to like, and you're not always going to be at your sharpest, and you know things aren't going to always come across right, and you're not always going to be perceived in the right way. And so once I accepted the fact that I can't make everybody happy, then I was just like, okay, well, I might as well just not care at all with, you know, what's the right thing to say at this time. And it's like, I'm not a politician. I'm not running for Senate. And just accepting that I'd rather embrace being imperfect than trying to be perfect. It kind of, it makes it really acceptable for you to err. Because if you act perfect and if you're not perfect one day, then people will freak out. But if Natalie Portman said half the stuff that I do on a daily basis, people would freak out. But because I say it every day, it's like normal now. And so I'd rather have it be normal for me to say whatever than to get myself stuck in, you know, a certain role that I carved out for myself.
Ronda, this is such a quick turnaround, 8 weeks.
Yeah.
When were you first approached with the fight? Were you taken aback? And how long did it take you? Were there any conditions?
It was like 3 weeks before the fight. Dana calls me up and he was like, "Hey, what do you think about fighting the end of February?" And I said, "Well, I was thinking about having a little bit of a break because I did 2 movies in a row and then went straight into training camp. And but I was like, look, you know me, I will fight for you on 24-hour turnaround if you need me to. It's like, if you need me for this fight, I will do it." And then I was like, well, let me talk to my coach real quick. And so I hung up with Dana and then talked to Edmund, and he was like, "This is perfect. This is perfect. Call him up and say we'll fuck up any bitch that he wants in February." And so I didn't know who I was fighting. I was just texting him like, "Hey Dana, I'm gonna fuck up any bitch you want in February, but let me handle this other bitch first." I have a phone, and then went back to training camp for Misha. And I didn't mean that in a bad way. I say I didn't know, but. You know how animated Edmund is when he speaks, and so he was just so pumped into it. It's not like, oh, maybe we should do the fight. I don't know. He was like, fuck it, let's fucking do it. Fucking go. And I'm like, all right. We're all excited about it. We're excited. Let's just do it. And so, and it's better too that I had such a long layoff that I want to fight back to back. And with the structure that I had in judo, we would go to the Europe tour, and we would have 4 weekends in a row. You do 4 World Cups. And we were used to always fighting kind of in seasons, in bunches, and it was also usually in the late winter, springtime, and so it's actually mostly it's the format that I'm used to, and taking 10 months off, it does affect you. I definitely felt the effect of it in my last fight, and I feel like I'm going to be way better now that I'm fresh from the cage the last time.
And Sarah, how about you? Were you surprised? One, that you were asked, you have one fight, it was in April, and there's been a bit of a layoff, but also with the quick turnaround as well.
No, I wasn't surprised that I was asked because I just anticipated it from, I guess, whenever she decided to drop down to the weight class. I thought, oh, 2 Olympians, even before that, that's something that people would want. So I had been training all along, anticipating getting that phone call.
Do you think there's any coincidence this is during the Sochi Olympics?
Probably not.
Yeah.
Did you find out before December 28th or after?
Before.
You did? Okay, so you had a little bit of notice.
Yeah.
Well, Ronda, the speculation is that you were cramming another fight in because you were going to go do another movie or something. And before your fight with Misha, we were asking you about other things that you had lined up, and you were like, well, I can't really say. So is there anything that you can say you're doing after that fight?
Well, my agent said that he was like, look, I want to be, really respectful of what you do. I was like, I'm not going to say anything to you about movies at all until the 29th. I will say nothing. And so he'd hit me up sometimes to be like, hi, just hi, nothing else, nothing at all. And so we sat down once after the fight, and we got to meet again. But he. I can't say anything other than I will be available after this fight.
Okay.
And whether I do anything with that availability, is still not decided. But I've talked to Dana too, and I will have a little bit of time to. You're not going to make me do another, 8-week turnaround after this one. Jesus, that would be intense. But I'm just saying, upping the ante for every single fight and making everyone a little bit more difficult. I think. Not just with Sara being such an amazing competitor, but doing such a quick turnaround, I think, adds that little more of that little impossibility factor to it that really makes me motivated.
Sarah, obviously Ronda has done some fantastic things, great job, but you as a great distinguished athlete also, do you perceive some jealousy from other female athletes, fighters, for the way most of the highlights are going to Ronda based on her great accomplishments?
I don't think that the attention has gone, just simply because of her accomplishments, but, she has a certain way with the media that generates a lot of attention. And so if other fighters wanted that, they would have to make the same sacrifices, and they could have that. It's not like Chael Sonnen, waited around for people to tell him. There's certain people that, just get the media's attention. And I don't think it's anything to be jealous of, because if you want it, go out and take it. So, I mean, don't sit around and be jealous and say she gets this and she gets that, because she's doing it. So just do it, in my eyes.
To that, did you watch the last season of The Ultimate Fighter? What did you think? And is that something you would do?
I actually didn't. And,
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
I told everyone I knew, I was like, don't watch that shit.
Well, I don't, as you guys probably already know anyways, I don't typically get involved in a lot of things going on, especially at my weight class. Like my family time is my family time, but I had like a lot of other things going on in my life. But had I not had some different things going on in my life, I would have, and as a support for women's MMA.
Is that something you would be interested in doing if you were offered to go?
I don't think that I would. I mean, I don't want the time away from my family. I have a young daughter, and time is something that you just never can get back. And, like if you want to propel yourself into, after you're done fighting, into a career in movies and things like that, it's very smart to do that. And it also changes your pay grade. You are just a higher level athlete. But since that isn't important to me, that my daughter is the biggest thing in my life, and that time with her is irreplaceable. So you can't put a price on it. So I'm not really interested in it.
Sara, we always hear guys talking about doing it for their kids, from the other perspective, from a mother's perspective. What's it mean for you to represent for mothers everywhere, being in this competition that, people don't think mothers should be doing necessarily?
Oh, I guess I don't think that whether you're a mother or anything else, you should, just box yourself in and limit yourself to any kind of role. I think that if you want to do something, you should do it, whether you are younger or older or whatever, like if it's not breaking the law and you're not like, kicking little puppies, there's no reason why anybody can't do the things they want to do. And, I wouldn't want somebody to say, oh, now that you're a mom, you shouldn't do a sport. And that's what it is. It's a sport. So yes, I'm not going out and beating people up in public, because that probably should be frowned upon. But as you're doing it as a competition with established rules and a referee that, helps protect the fighters, then I don't really see why anybody should have a problem with it.
What's your reaction to be up in this position as the number one contender fighting for a belt, which is a life-changing opportunity for a lot of people?
I don't know. I think about all those things in hindsight. So really, I just keep my eyes on what do I need to do to train, what am I going through for practice today, and I just stay very focused, and I really try to live more in the moment and enjoy the process. And you never know what's going to come afterwards. I could turn around and it be very similar to what I'm dealing with now. Like after I went to the Olympics, the next day I woke up and I was still the same person, still, so I mean, maybe it will be the same and maybe it'll be different, but I mean, that's for future Sara to worry about.
Ronda, why is this a fight that you wanted? It seems kind of like the opposite of the Tate fight, where Sara's coming in off a win. There's no rivalry. There's no editing that you could be put into a role as you had on the Ultimate Fighter that you were not happy with. So what about this fight is appealing to you?
I think how different it is really what is appealing. I mean, you can't really, it's hard to sell the same thing over and over and over. And I think that because the dynamic of this fight is so different, it's much easier to get people interested in another fight so soon, because if it was just pretty much the same product that you're trying to sell people twice in a row, I mean, it's hard to get people excited about it. And I approach every single fight differently, according to what I think is needed at the time, and I think this is the perfect fight that is needed exactly at this time.
When did you find out that it was going to be Sara?
I found out that night of the fight.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah.
Before the fight or after the fight?
After the fight, because for some reason I thought we were fighting in Canada. I don't know why. I thought Dana's like, February in Canada. I'm like, oh, okay. I was like, Canada. I was like, and I initially thought that after, if Kat couldn't fight, that I would fight Sara next. But then I was thinking, well, if it's in Canada, they might have me fight Alexis because she's Canadian. But then when I heard it was Vegas, and I was like, oh, it's totally McMann. Yeah. And then it was just that night. So
was it when he unveiled the poster? Is that when you?
At the press conference when he slapped it, he slapped it right down.
I mean, when I heard it was Vegas, and I knew for sure it was Sara. But when he slapped down the poster, that's when it was like official. But I already knew.
Right.
And DC, what have they told you in terms of consequences of this fight? Obviously, people know you and John Jones have had your exchange of words, and have they actually told you how close you could get if you beat Rashad?
Not really. It's just keep on plugging away at. There's a lot of factors, man. That Jimmy Manoa called and wanted to train together, and I've actually been kind of contemplating it because maybe I can help him beat Gustafsson, and then I would rightfully fight for the championship. So I think some things have to happen with Gustafsson fighting as well as he did last time. I think he would probably get a championship fight first, but if I fight well enough, anything can happen. Nothing's promised in the UFC, and if I fight well enough, I'm hoping that it gets me a title shot. I just kind of think that my resume speaks for itself. I've won every fight I've been in. If I beat Rashad, that'll be.
You've won every round.
I've won every round I've been in. If I beat Rashad, that'll be my third UFC champion. That'll be my fifth win in the top 10. So my most guys don't have to win that many times to get a championship fight. So hopefully my resume speaks for itself.
DC, it's been a long time coming for 205. Ever since you got to MMA, people thought you should be in this division. So what's it mean to finally get here and get an opponent like Rashad?
Again, like with the weight cut in the Olympics, I was nervous. I'm still nervous about it. There's some anxiety there, but I've done it the right way. I've gotten smaller physically. I've made my body smaller to where now I'm in striking distance. And then to fight a guy like Rashad, I think it says a lot about what I've done so far, because if you haven't done what I've done so far, you don't get to fight those types of guys. Those fights are reserved for the best guys. Fights against guys like Rashad Evans, you don't just get those. You have to earn those fights, and I've earned those fights. And it tells me a lot about what the UFC thinks that I've done so far and where they want me to go. Because if I win this fight, it's going to be very hard to ignore what I've put on paper.
You're always confident that no one could take you down. Do you feel that way about Rashad Evans?
Yeah. I'm not going to get taken down. That's just... I've spent a lifetime developing that skill, and I'm not getting taken down. And, when I look at a fight against another wrestler, this is how I approach it. In the sport that we all chose, I got to the top. People don't just quit wrestling. You stop because that's the end of your road, whereas mine just continued to go. So in the sport that I chose, Rashad chose, John Jones chose, and the rest of those guys chose, I went to the top of that sport. So, no, I'm not getting taken down.
Can you talk about the fight of the girls? What kind of fight do you expect between them?
Tough fight. I expect a really good fight. I saw Sara compete against some very good fighters and go the distance, so I know that she can go long. I saw something in Ronda last fight that Ronda's getting much better as a fighter. Ronda did some good clinch work last time. Ronda's striking looked a lot sharper last time. Sara's striking looked sharper, and in her UFC debut, she just demolished the girl. These are two of the best fighters in the world. Female, man, woman. These are two of the best fighters in the world. And these two girls are going to go out and put on a show because they only know one thing. You saw her fight 2 weeks ago. She's going crazy in there. And you see, I've seen Sara compete since 1999 is when I started watching Sara compete. I know that these girls know how to compete, so it's going to be a hell of a fight. There's going to be a lot of flipping and flopping over there. Falling all over the ground.
Highly technical.
Highly technical, flipping and flopping. Throw her down. Yeah, it's going to be fun. It'll be much different than what you're going to see in our fight. That's what
Okay, let's go 2 more questions here, then we'll get Ronda and Sara face.
I'm just wondering, based on your assessment of what you've said of their skill set, it sounds like we're looking at number 1 and 2 for quite a while, right?
I think they're the 2 best fighters. I really do think that overall they're the 2 best fighters because, again, I point to experience and competitiveness at the highest level. There is no substitute. You can say, well, I wrestled in the NCAA championship. Well, you didn't wrestle in the Olympics. You didn't get a medal. You didn't get to stand on the stand and see your flag being raised at the Olympic Games. Not many people got to do that. Not only did Sara do it in wrestling, which traditionally we're pretty good at, Ronda did it in a sport that we don't normally do that well internationally. So these girls have competed at the highest levels, and Sara beat the girl that beat her in the Olympics. She's the only person in history to beat that girl in a match. You know, so it's like these girls have competed at the highest level. I think these are the 2 best female fighters in the world, regardless of weight division, regardless of organization or anything. I know. You have to say something about Cyborg, but these are the 2 best fighters in the world.